Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Walton. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How are you doing? It is Tuesday, June 6, 2017. The president is insane. It's time to put it on record. I mean, we've said it for a long time here on the Kagro in the Morning Show and elsewhere, and you've been saying it in your homes. It's not anything I'm revealing to you. It's not new. I haven't uncovered a scoop. This is just plain fact at this point. I don't know how much longer we're supposed to go on pretending that this guy has got his act together, that he hasn't just got an addled brain that needs to be expelled from the presidency. But I don't know how long, I guess now I no longer know how long we're supposed to go on pretending he's actually the president. Maybe he's not. Maybe he wasn't elected. I mean, where do you want to start with today's news? The Morning has him wrapped up in tweeting everything but noting the fact that it's actually the anniversary of D-Day, because that's what presidents usually do with a day like this. But screw that. He's going to spend his morning, I don't even know what the hell he's talking about. Who knows what he's up to. This morning he's complaining about, the mainstream media, this, and I don't know what else. Let's say the last hour, or I guess 2 hours, since he woke up and started watching television, here's what's come to his attention. Although I guess he's been up a while. 4 hours, so it's 9. So about 5 o'clock in the morning he woke up and he started screaming about what was on Fox and Friends. Like he wakes up to watch cartoons like your kids used to, or like you used to when you were a kid. Every day's Saturday for this chump, of course. He's got no job, and he never has had one, and so I'm surprised that we haven't heard more about this earlier. But this morning, this morning, 5 o'clock in the morning, he wakes up, Fox and Friends is saying that Ted Cruz, remember when he was Lion Ted Cruz, says that Trump's air traffic control plan is a win-win for Democrats and Republicans. It's, of course, not anything because it's not a plan. You will have heard by now that yesterday he held a fake signing ceremony during which he signed a memo that he wrote and had typed up to look like it was a document that required some kind of a signature that outlined general precepts of what he thought what somebody handed him in terms of a privatization plan for air traffic control. And we made jokes all day yesterday about how that was likely going to mean, all kinds of stupid, it would present all sorts of stupid ways to hijack dollars from travelers' pockets, including stuff like, you're not even going to get landing rights at our airport until this flight has bought at least $10,000 worth of Ivanka Trump branded jewelry from Sky Mall. And I mean, who knows, honestly, what kind of stupid stuff they're going to do with this. And I imagine that there probably will be priority takeoff and landing flights, like basically all first class flights, et cetera, et cetera. I think it eventually comes down to that. The people who are insisting on repealing and rolling back open internet net neutrality rules now want to privatize, what order you can land your plane in. And of course, I don't know what the win-win is supposed to be. I mean, is there something terribly inefficient? Does anybody know something terribly inefficient about the way air traffic control works? I know pilots are always complaining because there's a million planes in the air. And as it turns out, if you have more than, 17 of them land at once, there's a likelihood that they'll crash and everybody on board will die. And then everyone will stop flying because the odds of getting killed in a crash go way up. This is bad for business, bad for everything. And I know, just like the way you and I complain about traffic, I'm sure pilots complain about air traffic control, and they complain to him all the time. Although what's really happening, the closest I can get to it, like a report that really looks like it's got some element of Trump's thought process, such as it is, included in this, notes that I guess when he flies around in his private jets, his pilots are constantly complaining, he says, about air traffic control being inefficient and weird and bureaucratic and dumb, and it just doesn't work the right way. Of course, they want to land. And I don't even know whether they think it's inefficient or strange. What's likely happening here is, what the hell's going on here? How come we're not on the ground? I want to get to my golf. You're going to make me miss my golf. Why aren't you landing this plane? Get this plane on the ground immediately. And they're like, well, air traffic control is holding me up. What's wrong with these guys? I told you, I know those guys from lunch at Palm Beach. You know, I'm not even certain what his justification in his mind is beyond, I want to get on the ground. Probably the pilots complaining to him about air traffic control are really just looking for an excuse to get him to shut the hell up so they can fly the plane. I don't know. You want to be on the ground. I want to be on the ground. I can't get on the ground because there's air traffic, and air traffic control is making us wait. And he interprets that as air traffic control doesn't know what it's doing. After all, I'm a very important guy, and I can't get on the ground to get to my golf game. That's proof in itself to him that they don't know what they're doing. So he's going to privatize it. Now, my thinking is, if I really want to try and come up with an explanation for why he wants air traffic control privatized, like I said yesterday, I can't think of any. Does anybody know of any way that the free market is going to be able to put two planes in the same place at one time and have it be safe? I mean, are there efficiencies that we're not realizing because it's not privatized? That's not really it. That can't be it. You can only have one plane in one place at one time. Otherwise, they crash. The end. That's science. The science is not out on that. And I think the only thing that really makes any sense, and that has so far gone unreported in connection, I think, with this air traffic control business, is that one of Trump's major gripes in life has been airplane noise at Mar-a-Lago. And he's had a running feud for years with the West Palm Beach airport and whatever authority controls it, in order to try and reroute planes so that there's less or no airplane noise at Mar-a-Lago, which is virtually impossible because it's quite close to the airport, because that's where people put things. And anyway, so he can't get it silent there, so he's had them, reduce flying hours, and he's fought bitterly with them. He's sued them, all sorts of things, but there's nothing you can do. You can't close Palm Beach Airport just because you want it quiet at your stupid house. So it's been a running battle. But now by privatizing it, I assume that he thinks that he can pay someone off or make it worth their while financially in a way that you couldn't do with the government running air traffic control, because there's no, you can bribe individual officials certainly, but if they don't go for it, you can't just say, hey, government, here's some money, make this work. You got to have a business interest on the other side in order to make this thing, there has to be someone who receives the bribe to do something. And if the local authorities won't do it, well, then maybe they can be forced to sell to someone who will. So I think that's probably what's behind it. And that's not, of course, the biggest story that there is. It's just sort of the starting point. So yesterday he put out this memorandum, which is not binding on anyone, and I don't even know what it says in it. Who cares? Why even bother reading it? It's a memo probably to the FAA saying, hey, I'd like to look at this idea of privatizing it. But he mocked it up. I don't know whether it was his idea or Bannon's idea or whoever, but they mocked it up to look like a bill signing with a table and the presidential seal and the pens and the official parchment, and he signed something that doesn't mean anything. That's garbage. That should have been an inter-office memo at best in a real administration. But it looked like I'm doing something. There's nothing for him to do. And that moves us to something a little bit larger on the radar, I guess. Today's reporting is what I told you last week, essentially, or even longer ago. It might be about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. When was it? That we learned from the mainstream media, the traditional press, that Jared Kushner was a super genius and had just negotiated a fantastic deal with Lockheed for the Saudis for $110 billion worth of arms. And I said at the time, hey, what was the price reduction? I mean, $110 billion is a big price tag. And the big story was Jared Kushner personally picked up the phone and he called the CEO of Lockheed Martin and he said he negotiated a better price for them, but no one will tell us what the price was or even what the price break was. We just got this $110 million price tag that was on it and no information. What, did it used to be $115 billion? It used to be $1 billion, and he negotiated it like a genius up to $110 billion. And that's all the information there is, because the South Koreans paid $1 billion for their THAAD missile system, and that's what the Saudis were buying, allegedly, according to the story. Remember, the story was that they weren't even interested in the THAAD missile system. They were signing a deal supposedly for something else. Now, by the way, it turns out that all the deals that they signed, even the ones that are actually, that might actually be real, and none of them are. I guess the new reporting also is, and we did mention this a few days afterwards when we learned this, that these were all memoranda of understanding and not actual contracts. So it's, here, sign this. What is it? It says that you're interested in buying something, not sure what, and that they're interested in selling it to you, but you'll work out the details of what you want to buy and how much it's going to cost and whether they'll make it for you later in a contract. But right now, a memorandum of understanding. Okay. And then it turns out, I guess today's reporting also reveals that most of those understandings were established during the Obama administration. Once again, the Trump administration stepping in, picking up the finalization of a deal negotiated under the Obama administration and saying, we did it, us. And not only did we do it, I negotiated a better deal from top to bottom. Anyway, so it turns out the only price points we had on the missile system was $1 billion for the Koreans to buy it, $110 billion for the Saudis to buy it. And, but I mean, honestly, for all the reporting that was out there about how brilliant the move of saving the money was, no one would tell us how much they saved. And it began to occur to me that maybe they hadn't saved anything. And maybe the whole thing was a fabrication top to bottom. And it's starting to look that way. No reporting today on whether or not what Jared Kushner or what people claimed Jared Kushner had done with Lockheed is also not true, but lots of reporting that says, yeah, these deals, they're not real. They just didn't happen. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. I mean, that's just fairly amazing to me. Maybe it's not that amazing to you, but, well, maybe you're smarter than I am. Anyway, I'm surprised by it taking so long, I guess, but I don't know. I mean, we're stuck in this very, very difficult place where a lot of people who have invested a lot in pretending that this presidency is valid, because that's another big story of the day. How do we weave all this stuff together? We're so invested in this. There's just, how do you extricate yourself from this and still be professional? I don't know. It's very difficult to do. So look, the deal is fake. There's that as news that comes from a report from the Brookings Institution. What are they again? Brookings. I don't know. They're Brookings.edu is all I know, but Brookings Institution, isn't it? Anyway, yes, that's right. Just want to make sure I got the name right. It's their report that everyone is latching onto and the traditional media are discussing. So let's go right to that source. Let's see. Bruce Riedel, I guess, Riedel is the byline on this. The $110 billion arms deal to Saudi Arabia is fake news. That's how they're putting it. Last month, President Trump visited Saudi Arabia and his administration announced that he had concluded a $110 billion arms deal with the kingdom. Of course, at the time they were insisting that it was wasn't it a $360 billion deal, and this $110 billion represented some sort of new addition to the existing arms deal, which they sort of kind of acknowledged already existed, but they were bumping it up by $110 billion. Anyway, only problem is there is no deal. It's fake news. So again, I feel like I have to stop and weave pieces of stuff together here to make a more comprehensive picture. We're reading a story that says he announced a $110 billion arms deal with Saudi Arabia. Only problem is there is no deal. It's fake news, right? And we mentioned this the other day, but I don't know if I read you the headline. Wow, gosh, there's so many things in here in pocket that it's going to take me a while to scroll back. But I mentioned to you that Friday generated the headlines of the president says his tax bill is doing very well in Congress and moving along. Only problem is, again, with the only problem is there is no tax bill. Only problem is all of it's fake. I mean, is there more basic stuff for the presidency to have on its plate than, well, I sent a tax proposal to Congress. I concluded a very lucrative arms deal with our overseas allies, et cetera, et cetera. How many of these things just turn out to be fake, right? There's no tax bill. There's no arms deal. There's no Kushner negotiation. There's no budget proposal because it's got a $2 trillion math error in it. I mean, there is a proposal, but it's not something you could really genuinely point to and say, this is a real thing. It's going to survive and it's going to work, right? I mean, you can't, right? No one could fathom that. And it's not the only thing either. It's not the only thing going on, even that indicates that the media is catching on to the fact that everything is fake. I got to pause in the story about the arms deal, just again to weave together more parts of the narrative. Where's this? I don't even know where I store all these things to put this narrative together. Here we are. Maggie Haberman's tweet from earlier this morning saying it's like a scene from The Money Pit, the movie The Money Pit. You remember that one? Everything in the Trump administration will only take 2 weeks, except it always takes longer. I mean, everything is fake. This story, peripheral to the one I started with, but it's all of a piece, right? Bloomberg Politics is what she's talking about. A piece called "In Trump's White House, Everything's Coming in 2 Weeks." It's got auto-playing video. I hadn't suspected Bloomberg of that. Am I forgetting that they're one of the worst offenders? CNN, by the way, the worst offender in the world in terms of auto-playing video. And I think they've rigged it up so that the pause button on their video players doesn't work. The only thing you can do is mute the sound on it. And then if you do that, then I think sometimes the pause button will work. Anyway, Bloomberg's, oh my goodness, look at the name of the reporter here. Toulouse Olorunipa. Oh boy, I'm sure I mangled that one, but, that's a tough one. They should have pronunciation guides. The more diverse and international we get in anything, the more pronunciation guides I think we need. There are people out here who don't know what they're doing, like me, who want to know what they're doing and not sound like an idiot. It would be fantastic. Anyway, more important than the name, of course, is the content. In Trump's White House, everything's coming in 2 weeks. This is going to be a very scattered show, but I hope you and I together will weave this into a coherent narrative. President Donald Trump has a plan. It'll be ready in 2 weeks. From overhauling the tax code to releasing an infrastructure package to making decisions on NAFTA and the Paris Climate Agreement, Trump has a common refrain. Believe me, that much I can tell you. A big announcement is coming in just 2 weeks. It rarely does. And I think he's shortened the time frame a number of times. I mean, I've heard him, it'll be Wednesday, 1 week. I wouldn't have pinned it at 2, but I guess people who listen to this stuff professionally might have a better idea. On February 9th, Trump boasted that his administration was way ahead of schedule. Quote, that's quote, way ahead of schedule on a tax overhaul. And it's not there. We still don't have it. That's February 9th. We're going to be announcing something. I would say over the next 2 or 3 weeks that will be phenomenal in terms of tax and developing our aviation infrastructure. Trump said while meeting with airline executives. So he had to throw in the aviation. So then he remembered, I guess, last week, oh God, aviation infrastructure. You see, even I shouldn't criticize him so much. He's like our show. Just patches whatever he's got together. We're going to be doing something about taxes, which I know you're interested in because you're a businessman. And oh yeah, your business is aviation. So it's going to be about aviation as well. It's going to be fantastic. That much I can tell you. Believe me. 11 weeks elapsed. 11 weeks before the White House released a one-page outline of the tax plan. This, by the way, just to connect more stupid dots, goes right back to, what do you want to tie into this? It goes back to his business style. He's never run a real business. He just has this, it's big. He's got a lot of money involved in it. No doubt about that. I don't know how much of it really belongs to him, but it's a family business. He doesn't have a board of directors worth their salt to report to. It's just his kids and his friends. So they don't hold him to account. He's not a Fortune 500 CEO. He never could be. If he were accountable to people that weren't already in his pocket, he'd be a total failure. He'd have been out on his ass a million years ago, or making $50 billion. I don't know which. You can't tell in today's economy. But the idea, for instance, that you gotta have a businessman in the White House so they can make decisions and be assertive and risk-taking and innovative. This is the kind of thing he does in running his business. I'm going to have it for you in 2 weeks. And if it takes 11, who fires Donald Trump? You can't. Right? So, haven't I been successful? Haven't I been at the head of this organization for however many years? Yeah, because no one can fire you. We can't fire you from the Donald Trump organization. That's true. But you suck. You're the worst. You lose all our money. It's luckily not a whole lot of his hours. So we really can't hold you to account. Anyway, so that's 11 weeks elapsed before the White House released a one-page outline of the tax plan. And they don't even say in here, it didn't even have tax brackets in it. It's not a tax plan. How does a tax plan not have tax brackets in it? But that's not a tax plan. That's a one-page document that says, I'd like to have a tax plan. What are you going to do with taxes? I'm going to lower them. Okay. That's not a tax plan. It's an idea about taxes. But again, a fake situation. Even after the 11 weeks elapse on a 2-week project, he comes to you with something fake. And then the airline, we're going to do something about aviation infrastructure. I'm going to sign a note that says I did something about aviation infrastructure. And that was, I asked somebody else whose job it is to talk about aviation infrastructure to take a look at it. Believe me, it's going to be terrific. In an April 29th interview on CBS This Morning, Trump said of his promised $1 trillion infrastructure construction program. And by the way, how did we get to the figure of $1 trillion? During a debate, Hillary Clinton said, I'm going to push a $500 billion infrastructure program. Oh yeah? Well, I'm going to push a $1 billion, or $1 trillion. That'd be interesting. I'm going to push, that would have been even better for the debate. Oh yeah? Well, I'm going to do $1 billion. That's actually less than 500 billion. What I meant was $501 billion. They should have been bidding like $1 more, and that's what a negotiator would do, right? He's making a great deal. Mr. Great Deal, I'm going to make great deals on behalf of America. I'm going to double the price of what she just said. So anyway, that's how we got to $1 trillion, which is not outlandish if you're going to actually invest $1 trillion, but he's not. I think we should point that out. His infrastructure plan is to privatize a bunch of things and slash federal funding for them as a result. So his big, I'm going to do a $1 trillion infrastructure program means I'm going to cut $1 trillion out of infrastructure and make somebody else pay for it. Anyway, so April 29th, he promised his plan. We've got the plan largely completed and we'll be filing over the next 2 or 3 weeks, maybe sooner, again with the 2 or 3 weeks. He's even hedges on his own dumb idea of how long it's going to take. The plan is not largely completed. It's garbage. And as you know, April 29th, a month and a half ago, and largely completed? No, it's empty. Still a one-pager, still says nothing, still pretends it's a bill and signs it, but nothing has happened here. No legislation has been filed. The White House has yet to outline the plan beyond broad principles described in Trump's proposed budget. Now, this piece is Dateline. Oh no, it is Dateline today. So even the stupid thing he pretended to be signing yesterday doesn't have any details. Trump's habit of self-imposing and then missing 2-week deadlines for major announcements has become a staple of his administration as it's struggled to amass policy wins. The president has used 2-week timelines to sidestep questions from reporters or brag to CEOs at the White House, but his pronouncements have also flummoxed investors, Congress, and occasionally even members of his staff. The president's inability to meet his own deadlines highlights his struggle adjusting to the pace of Washington. It highlights that he's a psychopath and he's done this for all of his life. And I mean, when he wasn't president, when all he had to manage was his campaign, he kept doing this. We're going to have this in 2 weeks. And of course, if it was policy, it never showed up. But how many other things did he lie to you guys about? And I mean, by you guys, I mean the press corps. I'm going to have a major announcement next Wednesday. And what does the announcement turn out to be? A tour of this DC hotel. And there's no announcement. How many times did he pull the wool over the press's eyes with stuff like that? I'm going to have a major announcement. You all have to cover it. And then he just takes you on a tour of one of his properties. He did it with the Scottish golf course. He did it with the DC hotel. He does it all the time. And I'm glad we're kind of compiling it all now and coming to the realization, but when are we going to get to the conclusion part? He's a psychopath and he has no business being there. And I didn't even get to the news from yesterday, which is that it turns out that the NSA thinks that the Russians really were actually hacking stuff that could have influenced the actual counting of votes and all this. He didn't get enough votes to win. He got 3 million votes fewer than Hillary Clinton, but yeah, you know all the quirks of our system. He might not even have gotten the votes he got in the states he says he won so that he could grab their electoral votes. Oh my God. We have no precedent for dealing with that. What do you do? What do you do with that? I don't know. Since I don't know, we'll do it a piece at a time. Let's continue with this 2-week thing. The president and his team work around the clock. That's hilarious. This is a quote, of course, from White House spokeswoman Lindsay Walters. He's got more spokeswomen going on in this house. He employs women, everybody, just like Miss Universe. He has a huge employment record with women. The president and his team work around the clock to fulfill the promises he has made to the American people. Baloney. White House spokeswoman Lindsay Walters said in a statement listing some of Trump's accomplishments as president. It was a one-pager, I'm sure. It was 1,000 pages of fantastic deals. There is no question that the administration has been turning the president's promises into policy at a remarkable rate. That's true. It's just you don't know what the remarks we're making are. It's been 15 weeks since Trump promised an aviation infrastructure proposal. In 2 weeks, Trump sent a list of, quote, principles for overhauling the U.S. air traffic control system to Congress on Monday, pretending to sign it like he needed to do something about that. By the way, renewing my calls once again for Congress to stop accepting written communications from this idiot, whether they be nominations or bill proposals or even, I don't know, whatever else he sends there. All sorts of communications come in from the president all the time. I don't believe he actually knows what's in them. Don't accept them. Call for a vote. There's no policy agenda to obstruct. It's not even about that anymore. Not even looking to waste time so that his policy proposals can't get to the floor and get votes. I'm just looking to highlight the fact that he's an idiot, a pretender, and a psychopath and should be dumped as soon as possible. And I mean, really honestly, if you just call his every utterance or scribbled note into question, people will begin to catch on, I think, to the idea that a significant and important core of the world's, or this country's anyway, leaders and I mean here, by leaders, I mean the people who sort of set the tone about our norms, like this is the president or that is the president. Who's the president of this country? Everybody says it's Donald Trump. Well, stop saying it. See what happens. Let's see what else they've got in this article here. At an April 29th rally, Trump drew applause when he promised an imminent announcement. Imminent! Any day now. On whether he'd keep the U.S. in a landmark global climate agreement. April 29th, how long did it take him? And I'll be making a big decision on the Paris Accord over the next, how long? 2 weeks. It's like that scene from, what's it? I can't even remember the name of the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie where he lives on Mars. What's that one? I keep thinking of True Lies because that one was just on cable the other day, but that's not it. The one where he's I can't even remember anymore. But he's an agent that they implant memories in his brain, and he goes anyway. He uses the disguise to try to get through customs on Mars, and it's a mask that's just programmed to answer certain questions. He gets stuck on the 2 weeks. Total Recall. Thank you. Duh. Well, that's how ironic is that? He couldn't remember the name Total Recall. Thank you, Justice, for putting that one back in my head. Armando, I see you've got questions. We've all got questions, Armando. What am I supposed to do? I'm just kidding. You can, of course, call in and share your questions. Let me just round this up, I guess, even though this is small potatoes. I'll be making a big decision on the Paris Accord over the next 2 weeks, Trump said in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And you know you have to tell the truth when you're in Harrisburg. Otherwise, they impeach you. Right? A month later, Trump was still weighing his decision, which is also a lie. He wasn't weighing anything. Top advisors said his thoughts continued to evolve. No chance of that. Trump announced his decision to pull the U.S. out of the agreement on June 1st. Trump's penchant for casually announcing short deadlines without a plan to make good on them underscores his improvisational approach to the presidency, says Barbara Perry, a presidential historian at the University of Virginia's Miller Center of Public Affairs. Well, here at the Waldman Center for Public Affairs at the University of my house, I don't know, I can come up with something more grandiose sounding than that. I say that Trump's penchant for casually announcing short deadlines without a plan to make good on them underscores his insanity and unfitness for office, not improvisational approach to the presidency. It means he's a psychopath, an idiot, has no ability to deliver on anything, and has no business occupying the White House. And I'm sorry that our constitutional system lacks for simple methods to be rid of him, but we're going to have some hard work ahead of ourselves. He cannot do this job. He can't cut it. He's not able to. He'll never be able to. He doesn't want to be able to. And he doesn't know it. But okay. That's extraordinarily kind for Barbara Perry to say that. Oh, it underscores his improvisational approach to the presidency. Super safe. Can't be, sued or run out of town by Trump supporters if there are any left at this point. But it ain't right. For someone who bills himself as the master of the art of the deal, well, where's the art and where's the deal, she said. That's a little stronger. Trump continues to be in campaign mode with a lot of promises that he's not fulfilling. Okay, fine. Terrific. He's stupid. He's incapable of performing the work. And he's a proven liar and psychopath. Again, like I said this morning, in reaction to one of his stupid tweets. What did he tweet? I didn't even finish up what he tweeted this morning. But saying, again, pointing to his gripes about the media. The fake MSM is working so hard trying to get me not to use social media. They hate that I can get the honest and unfiltered message out. This is the tweet this morning from the man who was caught, how many years ago? 30 years ago? Pretending to be an entirely different person, a fictional person. In fact, two different fictional people. Why? To make money? No, not even that. To change the course of history, to avert nuclear war, to save someone he loved from a heartache and embarrassment? No. He pretended to be different people. And I mean, again, with his voice, this is not Donald Trump. This is not me. Everybody knows what the guy sounds like. And he used it for the purpose of calling newspapers. Oh, important sounding, right? But no, calling tabloid newspapers. Somewhat less important sounding now. But okay, still, they have the news, front page every day. Everyone loves to look at the news on the front page of the Daily News and the New York Post because they have a funny spin on usually something of relative importance, right? Newspapers. No. Tabloid newspapers, who's he calling? The gossip columnists. Universally understood as the least consequential thing you could be spending your time on and still have a newspaper in your hands, with the possible exception of page 3 in the UK where they have naked women, which at least, I don't know, to some people that's probably very consequential. At any rate, the least consequential use of anyone's time with a newspaper. He's calling gossip columnists, pretending to be somebody else. Who's he pretending to be? Got a fake name, and he pretends to be Donald Trump's PR guy. He's Donald Trump, but he's calling to pretend he's another person calling on behalf of Donald Trump. And why is he calling the gossip columnists at the tabloids in New York? To tell them that Donald Trump imagines that he's dating very famous, beautiful women. And it's got to be in the news. That man, that little boy grew up to be president of the United States by cheating and hacking everything, apparently, which I guess we'll get to at some point. But without even getting to that story, this person is too effing crazy to be free on the streets for any reason, in any private capacity, but he's the president of the United States. They tell you, anyway, that he's the president of the United States. He used to call gossip columnists and say, I'm dating Farrah Fawcett. remember the time we're talking about, the 70s. I'm dating Kim Basinger. I'm dating the most beautiful. You have no idea. That much I can tell you. Believe me, it's fantastic. I'm having sex with all the most beautiful women. And it's important for you to realize that about me because ... There's no effing reason in the world why anybody could possibly give a crap. Not only who Donald Trump is really having sex with, but who Donald Trump imagines he's having sex with. Is there a less important topic in the world? And he's masquerading as somebody else to make sure it happens. P.S. Give me nuclear weapons. Now, if you think that was separated in time by, maybe he matured in 30 years. Remember, at the same time, he's planting stories about, I'm having sex with famous actresses. They deny it, but it's because it was so good, they don't want any other actresses to horn in on their action. That's the reason that they're going to deny it, but don't believe that. At the same time, he's telling the papers that. He's also saying, Reagan should give me the portfolio to negotiate nuclear arms reduction treaties with the Soviets. Because I know everything there is to know about missiles. And even what I don't know, it would take maybe an hour to figure out. It's just about making great deals. So, should we finish this day? The school year's almost over. Should we tell kids in history class before we dismiss them for the year? Donald Trump's not your president. He never was, he never should have been, and he isn't now. Because there's more news, which I'll get to in a minute. But Armando has been holding patiently. Do you still have questions, Armando, or have I answered them for you?
No, you haven't. But I actually have something to add to your
what could there possibly
piece about John Barron.
There's a million pieces to this. Yes.
On Donald Trump's love life or sex life or whatever life you wanted to call it 25 years ago.
Fantasy life.
Yeah. By the way, it wasn't that long ago. It was the early 90s.
Okay. I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt.
Right. So that was about 20 years ago.
50.
He was a 50-year-old man at the time. He
50. Wow.
He wasn't young and inexperienced.
He had an AARP card when he was doing this.
Yes. But what gives it some relevance to today is I don't know who it was. I think it was Hope Hicks.
How does she do it? I wonder.
No. Anyway, Hope Hicks said he was one of the most faithful men.
Yes.
I think she meant faithful and like he was religious or something.
Yes.
Which of course is also laughable, but the word faithful doesn't mean what she thought it meant.
No.
And of course, Ivana Trump could beg to differ, as we all know. Well, we don't all know. Those of us who live in New York know that Trump planted at the time the story of him bringing Marla Maples to Aspen on the family vacation. Ah,
yes. He didn't do that, but he said he did. Is that what it was, or what?
No, he did do it.
He did do it, and he wanted to make sure that everybody knew about it.
But he wanted to make sure John Barron made sure that the newspapers got a hold of it.
That's good, because it's important. And I mean, so many pieces to this, so many levels, including in his head, people had to know this.
They had to know that he brought his mistress on a family skiing vacation.
I wish I was Donald Trump's private parts, man. I can't. What a life this guy had. He should be president. We should make he should walk around the White House with his pants open. It was so great for America. This he thought people
15 years ago.
Yeah.
In the early 2000s. He was on Howard Stern. It's famous.
Yes.
People don't talk about this very much, but he was on Howard Stern.
Yes.
And he was bragging, and he actually was on the phone with Howard Stern, and he was bragging about this naked woman who was walking around his apartment.
That part I don't think I read about. She's so naked and beautiful.
You can look it up. I'm not making it up.
I have to believe you now.
And he called in, and he's talking to Howard, and there's this naked woman walking around, and he was describing her. And, Howard, of course, loves that. But,
I mean, it makes
so
for
did
good radio,
this
it doesn't
now.
have to be true.
This is the early 2000s. By then, he was, almost 60. He was about 58 years old.
Yeah.
And of course, that naked woman walking around in his apartment in Trump Tower is the current first lady.
Well, I guess. I mean, who knows who it could? Did he say who?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, that's great. I mean, we've all seen her, so I suppose there's no
Exactly.
surprise.
It's nothing we all haven't seen.
Okay, so people are naked. It happens a lot. But, yeah.
But he's a very religious man.
Yeah. Oh, I'm super religious. It happens in church.
He was not married to her at the time,
No.
as you're wondering.
Well, he's had an epiphany. I don't know what to tell you. He's not religious, and he says he's not religious. And I mean, for all the denying he's doing of playing golf, no one has ever caught him, nor has he ever denied going to church. I don't think.
That's for sure.
And there's one across the street, in case anyone was wondering.
Yeah,
right across the street from the White
There's one
House.
across the street, but his
Even his
church
denomination.
It's the golf club near your home.
Yeah,
The
half an hour to 45-minute drive to get to golf club. For him maybe a 15-minute walk, his shuffle across the street. But then again, he couldn't be bothered when they had the Trump rally on Saturday at Lafayette Square Park. He didn't go.
Which, Lafayette Square Park, man, that was pretty funny too.
To be having an anti-French rally. Yeah. But, he doesn't understand it, and neither do they, that Lafayette is a French guy. Or even that he's a guy. That's the name of a street. Lafayette Square, Lafayette Park. There's a lot, they don't know anything about Lafayette College, obviously, but.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was thinking. I said, do they not understand that there are lots of things and places and universities, prestigious ones, named after this no good French guy?
No, they have no idea about that, I'm certain. But
he's
got a long history of having this amazing conceit that and I guess here's how you learn to run for president. What makes a person run for president? Believe me, it was back in 25, 30 years ago, he thought it was critical that America know that someone was naked in his apartment, or that he imagined that he was dating famous actresses. People 10 times more famous than him. Certainly people who, honestly, just on a surface level of looks, you'd have to think was like, if that were true, if that person was dating you, they would be crazy. And I mean, I guess we were all supposed to believe it because I have billions of dollars, and so, strange things happen when you have billions of dollars. Women who wouldn't otherwise look at you. Well, okay. But then they would go to the press and say, no, I have never looked at him. And I wouldn't either, because there's people with a lot more money than him anyway, but I'm not interested in that. But he's a troll, and he grows his hair 6 feet long on one side to brush it over so that he looks like he did when he was 20, which was also horrible. Anyway, so he's been lying for decades about something as trivial as I need people to think I'm a virile young man, so I'm going to actually spend my time calling newspapers, pretending I'm somebody else, and saying these things. I wonder if he ever called Howard Stern, like did he call the producer as John Barron and say, Donald would really love to call you.
Howard would. They would have made fun of him.
That would have been radio. Play those messages.
You can have all sorts of opinions about Howard Stern, but he would have absolutely ridiculed him for having called
he wouldn't have hidden
somebody else.
That's for sure. Okay. Well, anyway.
I had questions,
yeah?
but actually I have a different question because we were talking about it yesterday. A new question popped up because Trump has two tweets on Qatar or Qatar or Gutter. First of all, here's my first question. How do you pronounce Qatar?
Gaddafi. I don't know.
Gaddafi.
That's how do you spell? I remember Gaddafi. I mean, I think it's the same problem. That sound we don't know how to translate it. I'm sure they should just show it in Arabic, I guess. But then we would say it was a Sharia news.
Or they could do the Prince. This is my symbol.
Yeah,
thing.
Yeah, I guess so. But I guess we're not really good at pronouncing.
I'm going to go with Qatar for this conversation.
Qatar is what people who like to tell me the pronunciations say is the thing. And also, I'm sure also that there's a dialect thing going on too. But Qatar, I don't know. I guess they thought it would be too ridiculous to spell it Cutter in English, and
Yes.
this looks.
They think he was from Breaking Away.
Yeah.
Uh-oh. Obscure movie reference.
I just referred to it as the insect repellent cutter. That's what I know. It
Oh,
as.
there you go. There we go.
But okay,
Anyway, here's what's happened. You remember, I didn't know anything about the story. I think you explored it to some degree yesterday, what it was all about.
Lots of explainers out today.
And then today, Trump, I do not call him the President of the United States.
Right.
Trump.
I have to stop.
Trump had a few tweets. The first one was, during my recent trip to the Middle East, I stated there can no longer be funding of capital R radical, capital I ideology.
Yes.
Huh?
He can't say radical Islam
what
or radical Islamic terrorism because he decided not to say that when he was there. So
radical. This is him saying radical Islamic terrorism?
Yeah, it's him not saying it if it was Obama.
Oh, rather, yes.
But,
this is his new.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I think that's what he's talking about. There can no longer be funding radical ideology.
Leaders pointed to Qatar, and he says, "Look." Leaders pointed to Qatar. Look. All right. Look. What? All right. So I guess he means look what they did. But then he's followed up with two new tweets in the last 10 minutes.
Okay.
And he says, and I quote, "So good to see the Saudi Arabia visit with the king, and 50 countries already paying off."
How so?
I don't know. So I was asking you that question. I thought you could tell. He continues, they said they would take a hard line on funding extremism.
How can
the king of Saudi Arabia is going to take a hard line on funding extremism?
Now,
it's the most incredible thing I've ever heard.
That's true, although I will, for the sake of argument, because both sides, I will point out no one in the world is better positioned to take a hard line on funding radical Islamic terrorist extremism.org than the king of Saudi Arabia. Well, I mean, if the rest of the royal family listens to him, which is a big question mark.
Right. And he continued to finish his tweet of 3 minutes ago. He said, and all reference was pointing to Qatar. Perhaps this will be the beginning of the end to the horror of terrorism. So this was the big plan to defeat ISIS. Tweet them to death, apparently.
Yes, go to Saudi Arabia and accept golden necklaces, which, by the way, I must reiterate, I have seen no reporting on it, but he's not allowed to keep that according to law.
Right. And where's the report on it? Who knows?
Yeah. I'm sure no one has wanted to break that bad news to him. And they're probably figuring, well, so long as it actually eventually ends up in the hands of the government, I don't know whether it's the archivist or whoever collects these things, I guess it's okay. We'll let him hold on to it for a couple of weeks till he's probably like an infant, till he forgets about it. And when he stops wearing it to bed, we'll give it away.
It's going to end up in one of the Trump country clubs.
It could. Or he probably thinks we'll put this away and it's going to go in the Trump presidential library, which does sometimes happen to these things, but on loan from the government. But there's no chance he actually knows or anyone has told him. That doesn't belong to you personally, which shouldn't crush him because he's a billionaire, but it will crush him because he's lying about being a billionaire. Plus it's bling and it's got all sorts of, well, anyway. Yeah, he doesn't know he has to give that one back, but the plan for crushing ISIS was go to the Middle East and they'll give you a huge party and maybe a golden award, and then whatever they say I should do about terrorism, I'll do, because who knows more about terrorism and terrorism funding than this bunch of Arabs? And he's actually kind of right about that. Doesn't know it, but I don't know what the payoff is, and it's clearly not the $110 billion either, because I didn't get to finish that one. But Brookings basically lays out the case that this didn't happen either, which I said moment it happened. There's no when the big story was, and Kushner is 100% absent as far as I can tell from all of the reporting on this. What happened to where's the pieces that said we said that he was a genius negotiator and apparently he isn't and never was and didn't do anything. Now I need to know, did he call Lockheed? Did anybody verify that? I don't know. I mean, maybe. But the Brookings thing has lots of detail, and I feel like I should spend some time on that detail, but I also feel like we need to weave together too many other stories. So I don't know what he thinks paying off is. And after spending time on the story of Saudi Arabia and Qatar and I'm going to say it's kind of like Qatar rather than Cutter or Gutter. But anyway, that story now is beginning to become a little bit clearer. I don't know exactly what the beef is between I guess I'll say the Sauds rather than the Saudis. The Sauds and
the House of Saud.
Yes, and the ruling family in Qatar. But at some point, like yesterday, I was kind of just sort of looking at a map, and if you look, maybe this is all it is. If you look at a map of the Saudi peninsula, the Arabian Peninsula, properly, I suppose, they would like to make it the Saudi Arabian Peninsula, but a little teeny bit of a peninsula off of the peninsula is what Qatar is, and I'm sure for years they've coveted this and have been looking at it and saying, why is that even a separate country? And the only answer is that was like one of the last tribes we didn't wipe out or conquer or force to swear fealty to us. And we were able to get around the swearing fealty issue by declaring ourselves the guardians of the mosque. And now, in order to be a Muslim in good standing, you have to swear fealty to us for that. But I would love to be able to be their political ruler as well. But, we ran out of arms. We ran out of time. We hit the wall right about the point where the rest of the West was saying, you guys really need to organize yourselves as a Western-style government and respect borders and have trade ministers and stop just simply shooting at one another in the desert for establishing your political order. So at the time they called the timeout in the great war against the Rashidis for dominance of the Arabian Peninsula, Qatar still had its own territorial integrity, and it's probably rubbed them the wrong way for a long time, although that's probably true of the rest of the Arab Emirates as well, and it's clearly bothering them about Yemen as well. So Oman has somehow stayed out of the picture. They're laying low in Oman.
The thing that strikes me about his tweets this morning about funding of capital R radical, capital I ideology. Why is he afraid to say radical Islamic terrorism? I don't know. I do know, actually, because he likes that golden necklace.
Yeah.
It's just, this is, Fox in the hen house on steroids.
Yes.
And he's tweeting it out, and there's also, of course, the complication that our major military base in the region is in Doha, which, unless I'm mistaken, is in Qatar.
Yeah.
I don't know. And guess what? I just saw another report flash by that Turkey's going to mediate the crisis. Erdogan's going to take care of the situation.
He may be able to do that. I don't know. But you don't want him to. But we'll cede that to him because hotel deal.
It's just, again, yesterday I said this could be a huge story or it could not be. I don't know. And you delved into it. But the bizarreness of his later, he started with just a typical nonsensical day of tweeting, not like yesterday where he basically was unhinged.
Yeah.
Of course he's unhinged, but it's like point and laugh at him unhinged, fake media, whatever the hell else he was tweeting this morning. To this, did he consult anybody? Did H.R. McMaster have anything to say on this one, like he did on the big NATO speech?
I don't. Yeah, we'll find that out in 2 weeks. Like everything else is going to come in
2 weeks.
Usually a little bit less time, but yeah, we usually find out after the fact that the advisors are unhappy because they weren't listened to. And I think just yesterday, one of the major media outlets was reporting, hey, did you know that Trump occasionally during the campaign, especially, we learned this to be true, the way he functions basically on a personal level, that he would actually very often do the opposite of what was counseled just to buck his advisors. Yeah, we knew that. I don't know why we're only reporting that now. So sometimes, his national security team tells him to do something and he does the opposite just to show that he can.
Just to shake things up.
Yeah. Those bad dudes that I appointed to tell me, hey, give me some help on national security. Every once in a while, you got to show them who's boss. You know, you're the boss. It says so everywhere. You know, I now doubt that it's true, but that's the structure we've adopted and decided to work with. What do you need to show them? I mean,
yeah, I don't know. I'm no expert on Qatar and this Middle East situation, and I'll defer to people who actually do know. But you know, I doubt Donald Trump knows much more than I do about it.
No, well, no chance. I mean, again, it's one of those things that there's a way you could argue that he does. He went to Saudi Arabia, and the king of Saudi Arabia basically taught him about the Middle East. So, at least from one side, he probably knows more about the situation than we do. Or, I guess, again, I have to hedge things. Those things were said to him. What happened to him, I don't know. Did he absorb them? Did it go in one ear and out some of the follicles of his hair? I've got there's no chance he understands it, but it may have been presented to him, one-sided, but at least in some great detail. And what he got out of it was, the people that gave me this fantastic golden necklace said, Qatar is bad. So it's bad. I mean,
well, it's Putin, helped me win the election, and he says NATO is bad, so it's bad.
Yeah, and it always comes, and it's not like I'm extrapolating that either. He says as much. He just says it in such a muddled and idiotic way. He usually explains, why do you love Putin so much? The guy says nice things about me. What am I going to do? Say bad stuff about him? I'm being polite. He says great things about me. He's very nice to me. I'm nice to him. The king of Saudi Arabia does nice things for me. 3 scoops of ice cream, golden necklace, sword dance. What am I going to do? He says Qatar is bad. What is Qatar giving me? Nothing. Now, as it happens, they're leasing a gigantic office in Trump Tower. Yeah, but what have you done for me lately? Lots of people are leasing stuff for me in Trump Tower. The Saudis gave me a golden necklace. Just yesterday, we also saw reported they spent $275,000 lobbying at his hotel over something or other. Bahrain, which is on the side of the good guys in the Gulf thing with the gutter peoples, whatever they are, they just spent a whole lot of money. They brought their National Day celebration over from some trash hotel like the Four Seasons to mine, which is fantastic. Beautiful. We had a great time. United Arab Emirates, their names on this, they put their name on the soccer shirts everywhere. Fantastic. Spending a lot of money in America. So, Qatar, what have we seen from them? No, they spend a lot of money with you. They actually do. You forgot that. But they didn't give you any gold. And like
our major military base in the region.
I don't care about that. I got aircraft carriers and super submarines. I can move them from the Korea to the Qatar if I need to, anytime. So nothing. Like I said yesterday, the bag was light this week from Qatar. So they're bad. And you know what? If they have any brains in their head, they'll invite them to Qatar, or the Qatari ambassador will make an appointment at the White House and bring a bag of gold and a chocolate cake.
Yeah,
and they'll be fine.
Absolutely. I mean, it's right there sitting for them. It's obvious that the Saudis were well ahead of the curve.
Hamas should spend its money on a gigantic ice sculpture scale, but made out of gold, thing that says Trump and has sparklers in it, and give it to him for the 4th of July. Hamas is fantastic. They're the best. When it comes to, that's why I want to destroy ISIS, and then ISIS will have to one-up them. I built a solid gold water park for Barron. Well, ISIS is not so bad.
You're joking, but not really.
No, this is how they do it. I mean, the Saudis just brilliantly play. I think that it's just they've coveted. Probably. Why not? Why not own Qatar? Why not own the United Arab Emirates? Why not own all of that peninsula? They've probably been staring at this stuff forever. Various other bits and pieces of internal politics makes it impossible to outwardly covet the territory of the UAE and Kuwait. But
I think
not Qatar.
On a serious note, I think that in that sense, Netanyahu does miscalculate a little bit in kissing up to to Trump, flattery helps, but gold is better.
Yeah, I mean he understands that to be better and more flattering, long lasting. If I can hold it in my hands, that might be all there is. I should read through some of these explainers on Qatar, and there's some good ones here. But maybe I'll just put them out there as reading today because God, there's a lot more. And I keep saying it. I haven't gotten to the story, but there's no chance that nobody in the people is there a chance? And anyone in the audience hasn't read about the NSA report on Russian hacking that, and really honestly, I guess we ought to spend more of our time concentrating on how the hell this thing came to light. I am still baffled that the Intercept got this, and I don't care that much. I don't want to spend any real time Intercept bashing. It's too difficult for me to deal with. Again, I ought to focus on individuals who are doing the writing. There is no point in
I agree.
But and also they've just hired Ryan Grimm, who I like and respect a great deal. And I like the other people who write for the Intercept that I don't believe. I like them. I don't believe them all the time, but I like them.
Well, I mean,
although it was brilliant to bring it to them in a way.
Well, I think what's kind of weird about, why she went, we obviously don't know.
Oh.
And she's not talking.
I can't even talk about the woman who did it.
her name is, Reality Lee Winner.
How did that happen? Okay.
I'm expecting a Trump winner is a loser tweet any moment.
Although I also I believe that at least for a minute there, someone was like, her name is Winner? What? Oh, my God, that's brilliant. Why didn't I think of that? You're all fired for not changing my name to Winner. Trump is pretty good, but Winner. Reality Winner, though, how did that? That's the part that kills me. I mean, if your name's Winner, terrific. Good luck to you with that. That's fantastic. You should be a quarterback in the NFL. It'd be great. But where'd they name her Reality? How old is she? 28.
25, I believe.
25. I mean, so 25 years ago, while Trump was calling newspapers saying, I'm screwing Kim Basinger. It's great. How does she pronounce her name? Anyway, well,
Kim
that's
Basinger?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Do I have that right? Basinger?
Basinger? I don't know.
I was never dating her. I never had a chance to ask. However, at that time, that's when Reality Winner was being born. And at that time, was reality television a thing? I guess Cops was on.
Oh, wait. Survivor was up by then, wasn't
25? Is it that old?
It's been about 25 years of Survivor.
I don't know if they had named it reality TV yet. I thought maybe Cops and
I'm
America's
wrong,
Most
because
Wanted.
They used to have 2 seasons a year, so it's probably like 12 years of Survivor.
But reality, like who would have thought to name their kid Reality? But they did. Anyway, in reality, she ended up losing, obviously, in this.
Well, she's under arrest. And, listen, there's.
I can't dispute the arrest.
My feeling on leaks is, everybody's view of, they're all criminal. That's just the fact.
Yeah.
Whether it's Snowden or allegedly Winner or Drake or Jeff Sterling or Daniel Ellsberg for that matter.
Yes.
Those were all criminal acts. You can't say they weren't. They were.
Jonathan Pollard.
What you're judging is, was it moral? Do you agree with it? Did the ends justify the means here? Which I think is a legitimate question of leaking.
Yeah.
And everybody has their own view. It depends on how you feel about the underlying issue. So I always think these arguments about leakers are in many ways sort of pointless, because all you're doing is bringing your own ideology to the argument. It's not like, okay, we have a blank slate. Let's argue about this one. No, I mean, we know where you're going to come down on it. Mm-hmm. If you believed that the NSA was doing good things with its surveillance programs, the 702 program in particular, then you'd say that was a terrible thing Snowden did.
Yeah.
And vice versa. And here, look, I'm pretty well disposed to Winter disclosing this, because we didn't know this. I didn't know it. Maybe other people knew. But people in the NSA knew that there was legitimate intelligence and reporting and analysis that said the Russians had hacked election infrastructure.
Now, it does remind me, and believe me, of course, people said it almost immediately on Twitter. This isn't news, but it did feel like there was some new element to it in terms of maybe the scope and the fact that it had been verified, et cetera. But I do recall hearing stories pretty early on about there being hacking at the election officials, at the county level.
There was reporting of hacking into voter databases, which was concerning in that, particularly in voter ID states, getting the vote suppressed could be as simple as changing a middle initial.
Yes, right. That was one of the more interesting tactics discussed in this. Is even if you don't change the vote numbers, and apparently this report said that they were dangerously close, but they didn't say whether they actually accomplished it or even attempted it, which is a little weird.
We don't know. Honestly, it's like
they couldn't
intercept. Part of the intercept, they seem to be warring within. So here's the things we know.
Yeah.
Here's the things we don't know. So, we don't know if they actually changed anything. I said, yeah, you know what? You're right. We don't know. You know what you do when you don't know the answer to those questions? You have an investigation.
Yes, but first you have to stake out the scoop. So they do that. I don't know.
No, I'm
okay
with it. I'm just kind of weird that they were like undermine. What's the point of that?
Yeah,
so of course we don't know.
Because the Intercept hasn't, as an entity, as an enterprise, hasn't been super supportive across the board of the idea of having these investigations. Right. On the other hand, like I said, they just hired Ryan Grimm, and he hasn't been like that. Glenn Greenwald, for whatever reason, has been invested in
debunking it, or trying to debunk it.
And a lot of their reporters have. And so I thought it was really quite brilliant in a way to take the story to them and say, well, if we take it to the Washington Post, sure, it might be reported right and I might not get arrested, but will anyone believe it? Sure they will. But will the people that I like at the Intercept believe it?
Yeah, but the arrest itself is kind of interesting because the way it's reported, you saw the reporting that apparently when HuffPo went to NSA with it, they brought the original document that she had given them, allegedly, also
pictures
allegedly.
Of it. Yes.
Which I found weird. I mean, wouldn't you just make a copy of it?
I thought that they did. I thought they took pictures of it, but maybe I read it wrong. But even so, they gave them a clear enough representation of it that apparently the giveaway was that it had been physically folded. The paper, she had printed this stuff out. Allegedly, someone had printed this stuff out and smuggled it out of a installation somewhere and then given it over. But
I think her key problem was she had access, and how many people accessed, and there were the stories I read, there were 6 people. She was one of the 6.
Yeah.
And she had contact with some of the reporters who reported the story.
Right. So I guess it's still possible that somebody actually, because part of the reaction was, wow, that's stupid. It was so terribly handled. What if it wasn't? I mean, what if it was just coincidental because it was you have email contact with people at the Intercept and you're one of the 6, but one of the other 5 actually did it but was smart enough not to email the Intercept from work. But you accessed the thing and you didn't think anything was wrong with accessing that material or with having contact with the Intercept from work because you weren't conducting any spying or leaking. So you figured, well, if they arrest me, I'll simply tell them the truth and then they'll figure it out. If they look any further. It was just poorly played on all hands, apparently. Well, I can't believe that Glenn Greenwald, I guess he must have had nothing to do with this, or it's not, like, how could Glenn Greenwald not have said, all right, so let me see. The plan is, he's not the executive editor or anything, is he?
No.
So he wouldn't have control over this. And he's in Brazil, and he's not in the office to ask. But, I mean, imagine telling Glenn Greenwald if he was the editor and he's there with you in Washington. So here's my thought is, I'll send these documents back to the NSA and ask them if they're real. Greenwald say, yeah, go ahead. Call me and tell me what happens. No!
Well, I mean,
what are you kidding?
It's sound reporting to do that. I don't
yes.
think, but I think that you do take steps to try to insulate your source.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing that
I have to believe that Glenn would have raised
no
the
expert
flag
at
about
it.
that.
So I don't know. I've never done it before, so I don't know if there's some standard masking techniques for these things.
But I have to believe that if Glenn were there, he would say, I want you to take extreme care, you're thinking of tipping off somebody else at NSA that you have
I will
this.
say this,
Please
though. They
don't
knew
do that.
Snowden in 2 days.
Yeah. All right.
Snowden fled, so I think that was probably the big tip-off there.
Fled, yes.
Or fled.
Yes. He did
Did
fleed.
I just do a Trumpism? And
he fled.
He also had fleas.
Well, I don't know. It does sound like it was poorly done, but it was only, I guess you can only conclude that it was poorly handled if she really did this, and we're still scratching our heads. It looks for all the world like it was her. But, it's so dumb that it seems like maybe there's some chance that it wasn't her. I hope.
No,
anyway,
it looks like it was her.
Yeah,
it seems like they got it. I don't know.
No doubt that it looks that way.
I assume they're going to throw the book at her, too. I feel bad for her in that sense. I think she didn't mean to harm the nation's security here. She probably had a different agenda, ringing the alarm bells on Russia's success in interfering in the election.
So let me see. Did you read all the articles? I kind of went through them yesterday, but then so many other things happened. As I understand it, we're talking about they hacked a election systems vendor, people who make electronic voting machines, and that we're going to set off all sorts of alarm bells. And we could have those debates all day too. Should there even be electronic voting machines?
Well, at this point, you got the argument for not having them is pretty strong.
Yes. And the argument for people, I guess, if we've made anybody upset by criticizing The Intercept in any way, we'll maybe get some of them back by saying we can be angry.
Is vindicated.
Yes, we can be angry at Democrats about this too. I will say this: if it turns out that electronic voting machines either did get if they did get hacked, I don't know what to do. Everybody, you're all out. I'm going to huge revolution. I don't know, whatever. I'm angry at everybody.
I guess the problem I had with the theories of it is there's not a network of voting machines. They're all standalone.
Well,
Mostly.
as I understood the plan was they hacked the election systems vendor. Oh, I have to say you can be mad at Democrats because in 2000, we all knew that something could go seriously off the rails, and then we've sat on our hands for 17 years, and now Trump is president. Okay. So, that's
fair enough.
That's on us.
That is on us, and maybe even you and me in particular, too.
Yeah.
Maybe we weren't vigilant enough about it. I still don't know the bottom line on that story.
The problem is that there was credible evidence that look, the stuff isn't all online and networked. It's not like you can hack in and change these votes. But it seems like they hatched a plan to make something possible or near possible. And as I understand the hacking plan, it was they hack the election systems vendor and get into their systems, and not the voting systems. They get into their administrative systems. And what you can do from there is you get the list of email addresses and names of elections officials in counties and states and municipalities across America who have purchased your system, who are clients of your company.
Right.
And with that, you then send phishing emails to all of those people who you know from their records are in charge of elections administration in the various jurisdictions, and send them emails with attachments that, if opened, will allow you access to the systems of the vote counting administrators for these various jurisdictions. And at that point, that's when different fun things can be done. Everything from, as you mentioned, simply going in and changing the middle initial of some number of valid registrants in that jurisdiction so that when they show up that day to vote and they produce their identification that says John Q. Public, and they check the name and they say, I'm sorry, we have a John R. Public registered, but your ID says John Q. Public. You can't vote today, or at best you can get a provisional ballot today. Plus, we're arresting you for voter fraud on top of all this if you happen to be, fit our profile, let's say. So you can do those things. And then, as the report hinted, we just don't know, does getting access to the registrar's or the Secretary of State's computer systems, does it allow you at some point to say, hey, Trump won Waukesha County by 10,000 votes. Click, click, click. You know, like changing your grades as Ferris Bueller or anybody else.
Exactly.
I mean, can you do that? Well, you know, you might not be able to hack into individual machines and do it at that point, but who knows what becomes possible. I thought that was a very brilliant plan if it's realistic.
Again, you know what could give us answers? An investigation.
Yes. Or hackers, by talking to them and asking them what's up. But
still, you have to verify what they did.
Yeah.
You have to look and see, well, could they do that? For example, the
There's
voter
people in the
rolls.
audience who could tell us more about that.
Yeah, I mean, the voter rolls, are they centrally located? Yes, I believe they are. I mean, I can look up anybody's voter registration in Florida. I don't know if you're aware of that, but those are public records.
Yeah, that's not surprising, right?
And not only that, you can see if I voted or not, and what elections I voted. You don't know who I voted for. Well, you do, because I would tell you. But, you know, just looking up, you know, John Q. Public, you can see what party he's registered to, and you can see what elections he voted. And you can see what precinct he's goes to. So there's a lot of information that's centrally stored. Could you do it? Could you wipe people's names off the voter rolls? Now, yeah, I suppose you could. Now, the problem with that, I guess, just as a conspiracy theory, is if you knocked off 20,000 people off the rolls, and look, remember, if you had done that in Wisconsin and you knocked off 20,000 Democratic voters, you changed the result in this election. Yeah. That's not the norm. They're usually not that close, but it was what was it? It's 27,000 in, so it would have been a little more than that, but I guess it was 10,000 in Michigan. So the numbers were close enough. I mean, it just, as a plan to sway an election, it seems, you know, pretty far-fetched, but you know what? There's only one way to know, and that's to investigate. And I think that if I would say one thing about Reality Winner, I had not heard about these particular intrusions in their reporting, and it did happen at the very tail end. It was a few days before the election, which actually makes sense, but we didn't hear about it, and it certainly merits a much closer look.
Yeah, and I imagine Robert Mueller will be in on that, and
I hope so.
I imagine that the scope keeps widening, or potentially widening every day.
According to Rosenstein, it's as wide as Mueller wants it to be. Yeah. So in theory, he could set up a perjury trap against Trump, and you got to get him sued for sexual harassment, get him under oath, and maybe we'll get him for perjury.
Get something. This is look, I guess I won't spend too much time. You certainly could spend literally, hundreds of hours.
I don't think we know enough yet to spend a lot of time on it.
And the likelihood that there's anybody in the audience that doesn't have access to the Intercept story is next to zero. We'll include it, of course. We had to note it. I mean, how do you not note that? But we'll sort of have to wait and see what comes next and what develops out of it. Other areas of inquiry continue. The Middle Eastern stuff is amazing. Yeah,
can I take, because I have to actually get off at 10:30, but I wanted to just pose some procedural questions for you.
All right.
That were raised by some of the news that we've heard. One, that crazy 89, let me pose the questions and you can address them in the order you think they're interesting. That 89-year-old statute or whatever about the 6-member rule. Seven-member rule. If you could address that.
I don't know.
Can I give you the number 2 is Trump says they want to do infrastructure by reconciliation. Huh?
Oh.
Could you explain that? And finally, when they talk about the procedure on debt ceiling and raising it, how come that's just a general question, not even pointing fingers at anybody? How come that's not subject to the Byrd rule?
Okay, yeah, I'll deal with those in reverse, just because it's debt ceiling. I mean, when you say it's not subject to, are someone suggesting?
Because it's no appropriation, right? Is that why?
It's not an appropriation, but it's there's a specific exemption from it. But is someone now proposing debt ceiling
Yes.
in reconciliation bill?
Oh, no. They're talking about it. They want it done before August, and they're sort of agnostic on the question of whether they will permit writers to it or whether it will be a clean one.
Oh, I see. Okay. Well, the Byrd rule only applies to reconciliation bills. So if the debt ceiling comes in a clean bill or even with stuff hung on it, but if it comes on in a later bill, reconciliation rules and the Byrd rule don't apply. It's not a factor.
So, but it's a 60 vote threshold.
Yes.
Okay.
On the other hand, would this count as Byrd rule? I don't know. Anyway, there is a clear statutory inclusion in the Budget Act. There are, was it 3 or 4 specific types of reconciliation instructions that can be issued.
Right.
The one we always run into is just your basic, Byrd rule compliance being the only restriction. You're not supposed to be setting policy, but anything that can cut money from the budget or originally it didn't even have to be cutting from the budget, but something to have budgetary impact. Social Security issues excluded. There's no way you can get those in. There's no angle you can do. That's just ineligible for inclusion in a reconciliation bill. And there's a specific inclusion. The debt ceiling can be included. You can issue instructions to hike the debt limit in a reconciliation bill. There just has to be instructions in the budget resolution that kicks the whole process off that says we need a debt ceiling presumably increase. I don't think they've ever lowered it. But that's allowable under reconciliation. It's a very simple and straightforward thing. Why they have not done that lately, I do not know. I think they're just embarrassed. Or lately they've wanted to make such a political issue of it and hold the thing hostage and make it more difficult to raise the debt ceiling. But the framers of the Budget Act were somewhat prescient, I think. I guess they must have gotten hints from, I guess at the time, from Republicans that they might one day, in fact, start trying to hold the debt ceiling hostage. So they included that and said, go ahead, you can do that by reconciliation. No one of late has thought to do that, and I haven't mentioned it much because I'm afraid they'll find that out. And they'll take away all of our fun of watching them squirm in raising the debt ceiling rather than default. But it's too late to do it for this one, but they could certainly do it in the next budget package. I guess the second of your questions was about doing infrastructure by reconciliation. That might just be Trump thinking, wow, reconciliation is easier to deal with because it only requires 50 votes, so let's just do it. Whatever it is we think might not be doable because Democrats might get in the way, let's just do it by reconciliation. And that's not how that works.
Well, I mean, the thing that strikes me about infrastructure, it's in theory, it's just spending. I mean, how could that be Byrd rule compliant?
If you do it traditionally, and I guess that's something else we need to note, is that there's a lot of writing in the last couple of days that I haven't had time for or even time to read that basically alleges Trump's infrastructure bill cuts federal infrastructure spending. He says,
okay, well,
I'm going to, I'm going to, and that would be Byrd rule compliant the way he wants to do it. I'm going to have, he keeps saying I'm going to do $1 trillion infrastructure package. And I'm sure it touches on $1 trillion worth of infrastructure. It just doesn't pay for it from the federal government. Apparently, everyone has heard about, like, for instance, the air traffic control thing. Well, we're going to privatize that. But a lot of it is just privatization of infrastructure or infrastructure projects so that the federal government can pay less for it. And I guess instead, someone else develops a private highway and can charge tolls on it. Or we need to build a new airport for Baton Rouge. Well, do it privately, and tickets will cost that much more to fly to Baton Rouge. And whoever built it gets to keep the money.
I guess I don't get it then. I mean, what are they saying? They're gonna put it out to bid, and the lowest bidder wins wins the contract?
I don't know. It's
still
not clear.
Expenditures. I don't get it. I don't think they get it either.
I don't think so. I think that at this point, Trump is just saying, I think everybody thinks like me. And that if you say you're going to do it by reconciliation, they'll take you seriously because everybody knows that only takes 50 votes for some reason. People actually are aware of that. So we'll just say anything that you think is, I'll propose something. You say it's a pipe dream because 60 votes, and I'll say, oh yeah, reconciliation. And then 90% of the population says, I can't, that sounds too technical. I don't think I have a talking point to defeat that. And then they just put it in the newspaper.
Oh, okay. Good. I mean, that's what I'm getting at. It's like that $110 billion
maybe
Saudi arms sale.
I don't know. I haven't seen.
They say it, print it.
I'll
it's
take
not
a look.
True.
But let me see if I can find some news on using reconciliation for
infrastructure. It came out yesterday in some
I'll take a look.
cockamamie story. I'm not sure how serious the story was supposed to be taken. Remember, this is a guy who, as you said, says in a couple of weeks we're really progressing on our tax bill, which hasn't even been proposed.
Mm-hmm.
All those things. The healthcare thing. Tomorrow we'll listen to Joan and she'll bring us up to speed. I think she posted something this morning that says McConnell's taking another crack at it, but I'm not even sure I understood the story or what McConnell said, but that's where I'm sort of at right now. I don't even understand. In the conventional governance questions that we're used to discussing, I don't know that we can make head or tail of anything the Trump administration says.
Yeah, maybe not. I can't find anything about this.
Put in infrastructure reconciliation, Trump.
Yeah.
That should give you something.
Yeah, well, it gives me articles from May.
Oh, really? No, it was a story yesterday.
I just see something from 17 hours ago from Lexology, which might... Trump infrastructure plan envisions greater role for public-private... I don't know if that's...
No, that's not it. There was just about... It literally was just about... I can say, I'm not giving you something you have to do now, but at some point I'd be...
Yeah, I'll have to track it down.
It's probably just gibberish, and I'm probably wasting your time, but I did hear it, and I was like, what?
Well, that might be, that's a story in itself. Is once again, the guy doesn't know what he's talking about and just says something. The 7-member rule thing that you raised is actually new to me. It's been used in the recent past, as it turns out. I read it, in the article that you sent. And that's just, for some reason, there's this 80-something-year-old statute out there that says that, basically it makes it possible to,
the minority to ask for things.
Right. Any 7 members of the Government Oversight Committee in the House. And that's not a lot of members.
No, because it's like, 25 members, right?
There's quite a few. I looked that up. I wondered whether it makes sense. Maybe at the time they wrote it that there were only 6 minority members.
Yeah, that would make
like
sense.
That.
So, that would actually make sense because then you'd get 1 Republican. Right. It's the 7.
Yeah, so at that time, I'm sure, who knows who the majority was, but 7 is not a lot. But apparently, in making requests for information from executive departments and independent agencies, any 7 members of the Government Oversight Department or committee can sign on to a letter, and then you have I guess what it gives you is the right to make that demand and then take the agency to court if they don't comply. And then spend 2
there's
years
a lot
trying to get it.
Unfortunately, unlike Donald Trump, occasionally I have to do work, so
yes,
I'm going to have to.
I guess you better do that.
So I have to depart. So, but I may bring it back to you because I think that's actually kind of an interesting story. It touches on Deutsche Bank and
now we got something to do.
The GSA covering up on this Trump lease, which is a big deal. But I'll need. You and I will both need more time and more research to discuss it intelligently.
Or in any fashion whatsoever.
Yeah, or in any fashion. All
okay,
right, I gotta go.
No problem. Thanks for bringing this to our attention. This is what we have to do today. Just sort of cast about all over the place and find as much as we can about this stuff. Now, the 7-member rule I'll bring up for 2 reasons. 1, it's interesting, and 2, it's been addressed at Daily Kos, and a long time ago at that. So this will give me the chance to explain a rule of procedure as best I can. And it's new to me. It's pretty rare. So let's take a look through what I found, or rather what Armando sent to me yesterday. This is, published at medium.com from Elijah Cummings' committee office there. So it's under the byline of the House Oversight Dems, ranking member being Elijah Cummings. And they published this piece in Medium. Trump administration policy on refusing Democratic inquiries. Remember the other day we noted that it was, the departments were getting instructions from the Trump administration, basically stop responding to Democrats in Congress when they request information of you for oversight purposes, because they're Democrats. They're the children of Bono voters. Time for some traffic problems in Congress is what was being proposed here. And the House Oversight Dems remembered that there was this thing. And it wasn't that they remembered it because they read in a textbook, from 80 years ago that there was such a rule. Henry Waxman apparently knew about this and used it, and he was the immediately previous chair and ranking member of House Oversight. So Elijah Cummings would have picked this trick up from him, and staff would have picked this trick up from him. So Trump administration policy on refusing Democratic inquiries. Democrats invoke 7-member rule to demand documents relating to Trump Hotel. That's what they've decided to use it on first. Essentially the question of, what about this deal, this lease deal, that all of a sudden the administrator of the GSA, General Services Administration, although now, you'll recall early on in the administration, and even before he was inaugurated, we were wondering, how do you get around these provisions of the lease, the contract, that say nobody involved in this lease can be a government employee? And it seems so obvious that Trump will have to just get out of this. He'll have to divest himself of any interest in this hotel in order to be in compliance, or in order for the lease to be valid. And instead, the GSA simply said, it's actually all okay. So we have some questions about that. So they start making some requests. Give us these records. And the GSA may or may not be complying with those requests for records, and now may be under instructions from the Trump administration not to comply with those requests. And so I guess at this point, the Dems on the House Oversight Committee realize, why don't we try the 7-member rule? Let's read a little bit about it. Today, all 18 Democratic members of the House Committee on Oversight and Government Reform ramped up their fight against the Trump administration's new policy of refusing to comply with any Democratic oversight requests by invoking the statutory 7-member rule in a letter to the GSA demanding complete, unredacted copies of documents relating to its lease with President Donald Trump's company for the Washington, D.C. hotel in the old post office. Last week, the Trump administration released an opinion from the Office of Legal Counsel arguing that agencies could ignore requests from members of Congress other than Republican committee chairmen, asserting that authority to conduct oversight, quote, may be exercised only by each House of Congress or under existing delegations by committees or subcommittees of their chairmen, and that individual members do not have the authority to conduct oversight in the absence of a specific delegation by a full House committee or subcommittee. And that's not a bad ruling. It's just not what policy has been under previous administrations, but previous administrations have fully staffed their offices, for one thing, and are not partisan dirtbag cheater bastards like this one. But yes, strictly speaking, oversight is actually, in terms of demanding something that would be binding on the administration would be, quote unquote binding, considered binding up until now, subpoenas, basically. And a subpoena can only come from a committee or one of the houses of Congress. Individual members can't issue subpoenas. Yes, Devin Nunes can decide to authorize one as chair of the Intelligence Committee. And each committee has its own rules about whether or not, about who can issue these things. And in some cases, I'm sure the chairman can do this unilaterally. It's just usually not the case. But individual rank and file members of most committees can't write to ask for information and then insist that they have an absolute and enforceable right to it in the same way that they can with a subpoena. And the Office of Legal Counsel is pointing that out, I think, correctly, that one member writing you a letter doesn't mean you have an obligation, legally speaking, to answer it. You just politically, normally you do, because why not? Somebody asks for information. It should be public in most cases, and so they do comply with it. Anyway, in their letter today, that would be the one from the Dems on the Oversight Committee, the Democrats strongly objected to this new policy, but pointed out that the 7-member rule is unique authority that was, in fact, passed by both the House and the Senate and signed by the President in 1928. In other words, it's a law, explicitly delegating authority for any 7 members of the Oversight Committee to require any executive agency to, quote, submit any information requested of it relating to any matter within the jurisdiction of the committee, unquote. And I guess this is unique to this Oversight Committee members. It's just, I don't know why they did it. They did. It's there. During the Obama administration, GSA explicitly recognized and complied with a request for documents under the statutory 7-member rule regarding the old post office lease agreement. GSA produced a wide range of documents in unredacted form, including an amendment to the lease, a 2017 budget estimate, exhibits to the lease, and monthly income statements for the Trump International Hotel. And we should absolutely be getting those things, and I'll tell you why in a minute. The Obama administration similarly complied with a 7-member rule request to the State Department in the first weeks of the Trump administration. GSA had informed the committee in a letter of February 6th that it acknowledged the authority of the committee members to obtain information under the 7-member rule. Quote, should the U.S. House of Representatives Committee on Oversight and Government Reform or any 7 members thereof submit a request pursuant to 5 U.S. Code Section 2954, GSA will review any such request. Well, that's nice. Whether they'll comply with it is a different question. In light of last week's announcement of the Trump administration's new policy, the members wrote today, your actions to date are not only a reversal of previous executive branch policy and a direct impediment to authorized congressional oversight, but a violation of the statute passed by Congress creating the 7-member rule and explicitly delegating this authority to members of the Oversight Committee. That's the end of the piece in medium. It doesn't tell us a great deal except for the existence of the 7-member rule, which is fascinating enough in its own right. Now, the other reason I wanted to bring this up is to give props to the writer here and to the Daily Kos community in general. The things we know, the things we produce for ourselves are really quite remarkable. This is a diary. Let's bring this up in original form here. A diary from user FWIW, for what it's worth, I assume is what they were going with on that one. That's the what I know that acronym, I guess, to be. So if not, if there's some personal meaning to it, I apologize to FWIW. But this is dated March 21st, 2007. This is a 10-year-old diary on the 7-member rule. Good job, FWIW. A couple of months ago, he or she says, I published a diary entitled Congressional Oversight How To. And it's linked, of course, and you can take a look, that referenced an article published by John Dean, yes, that John Dean, on Find Law, titled, quote, The Arsenal of Tools Congressional Democrats Can Use to Force the Bush Administration to Cooperate with Their Efforts to Undertake Oversight, unquote. And you'll recall that back in 2007, we were locked in battle with the Bush administration over congressional oversight. And you'll recall that during the 2005 and 6 era, when it had become clear, for instance, after the election, thank you very much, New York Times, that the Bush administration had been conducting a considerable amount of unwarranted and illegal domestic electronic surveillance for which George W. Bush should have been impeached. And we were lectured, do not bring up the I word, impeachment is off the table, we just need to win back the Congress, and then we'll get oversight, and that's how we'll deal with these things. And then, in fact, we did win back the Congress, and then we did try to conduct this oversight, and we just weren't getting anywhere with getting all that information. Gosh darn it. That's the atmosphere in which FWIW was writing about and commenting on the 7-member rule. So he continues here, or she continues here, as described in my previous diary, the 7-member rule allows any 7 members of the House Government Reform Committee or any 5 members of the Senate Government Reform Committee to request every executive department an independent establishment of the government to provide information. This rule has been used against the Bush administration by Congressman Henry Waxman, who was at the time the ranking member of the House Government Reform Committee. That would have been prior to the 2006 elections. Congressman Waxman is now chair of that committee. Back then he was anyway. A visit to the House Government Reform and Oversight Committee shows that the committee has the following information on the investigation's 7-member rule webpage. And this is what it said there. 7-member rule is shorthand term for a federal law that gives members of the Government Reform Committee and its counterpart in the Senate a legal right to information from executive branch agencies. Once again, citing U.S. Code Title 5, Section 2954, and, well, it says what it says. We've already read that. Examples in which committee members requested information under the 7-member rule include, let's see, May 17th, 2004. All 19 members of the Government Reform Committee minority file suit, that would have been the Democrats at the time, against the Secretary of Health and Human Services to compel the administration to release cost estimates prepared by the HHS actuary during congressional consideration of Medicare reform legislation. Part D stuff. Remember that? And there's another example here. Wednesday, June 4th, 2003, 9 committee members requested the Department of Homeland Security provide information about the assistance the department provided in tracking down Democratic lawmakers during a dispute among members of the Texas legislature. Remember that? Wow. I wonder what they got out of that. While this rule is not invoked very often, it does provide Congressman Waxman's committee with a means to get information from the Bush administration without a subpoena. I think we may see this rule used again in the near future. Well, maybe. Of course, we may have waited 10 years to find, I don't know. I'm sure in the intervening years it was used a number of times. Let's see. Oh, here's a comment here from DWG. Yes, another precedent from the Clinton era was forcing a sitting president to testify under oath. Time to subpoena Bush to explain what he knew. After all, only he has the authority to dismiss U.S. attorneys. Remember when that was an issue? I want to see the unitary executive exercise his right not to incriminate himself while seated before the Kliegelites on Capitol Hill. Of course, we didn't get that. Instead, we got the private, off-the-record, non-sworn testimony / interview with Dick Cheney at his side. This stuff has been going on forever. Time is a flat circle. Luckily, we have records of it at Daily Kos. So kudos to FWIW for explaining that. Pat on the back for yourselves as members of the Daily Kos community to have that kind of deep record-keeping knowledge and interest enough to make those inquiries. So, what else might we include in today's roundup? I think we've answered most of Armando's questions. Not that he knows because he had to go off to work, but you can listen to the podcast. Here's a discovery, by the way, with respect to, well, you know what? Hold on a minute. I'll wait until we get to, we hit another piece here. I said that there was another reason to bring up the Trump hotel case. And let's see. Did I put this thing aside? And if so, did I bury it with other materials? I probably did. But out there in the ether somewhere, with regard to the Trump hotel, was it a tweet that I'm looking for? I can't even recall now. Somebody was bringing up the very interesting and still relevant point of when might we expect the Trump administration to give us some indication of what steps they're taking to remain in compliance with their announced policy back when Trump was trying to demonstrate that he had no conflicts of interest and could therefore legally take office. You'll recall he promised us that he wouldn't be violating the emoluments clause with his D.C. hotel because he was going to donate all of the profits, however you define them, from foreign governments that were taken in by the Trump hotel to the U.S. Treasury to help reduce the debt. And then it sort of became, well, I'm going to donate, maybe I'll donate it to charity. I might donate it to the United States government. I'm not really sure what's going to happen to it. And then it was, well, do you mean the profits or all proceeds? And then the question became, are you going to give us a public accounting of those things? And when are you going to start paying that money in? Because then, immediately at that point, back to our Qatar gutter story, we immediately saw, for instance, Bahrain, the government of Bahrain, moving their National Day celebration from, I think, the Four Seasons to the Trump International Hotel. And immediately the question is raised, well, what about that? Is that not emoluments? Are you not getting payments from a foreign government through that? And you said you were going to be donating all of that to the Treasury, and then you changed it to charity. And when are we going to see that start happening? And just as with your paycheck, and I think eventually they decided, he is going to donate his paycheck, and they put on some show about announcing to which charity his paycheck was going to be donated. But then they decided, first they said, well, we're going to do it at the end of the year, right? It won't be his monthly paycheck being donated. But then they came up with something to try to put on a show about his making the first donation. No word since then about where the rest of his paychecks have gone. And in all this time, no word about where proceeds from the D.C. hotel are going either. And I'm pretty sure that somebody made mention of that recently, and I guess I just don't have it at my fingertips anymore, and I thought I did, but basically no word on how much the hotel is taking in, whether or when we might get any accounting of all of that, and what is going to happen to that money. And that was just recently in the news too, so I'll try and grab you I saw a tweet about it on Twitter, and then it was in the news as well. We'll try and grab you a source on that. But yeah, the emoluments thing continues to be a tremendous stumbling block for these guys insofar as they care about anything. And I found this along the way. I mentioned to you before, remember that it is the law that Trump can't keep that golden collar that he got from the King of Saudi Arabia. What law? It's Title V again, by the way. 5 U.S. Code Section 7342 addresses the receipt and disposition of foreign gifts and decorations, and that's what this is. And in addition to defining all of their terms, the important part of the law says basically that these things have to be turned over to the government. An employee may not request or otherwise encourage the tender of a gift or decoration or accept a gift or decoration other than in accordance with the provisions of subsections C and D. What do subsections C and D of the law say? C basically says that you can keep it if the Congress consents, and they might just go ahead and do that, even for this expensive collar, but that would be in violation of the spirit of the law, because it says the Congress consents to the accepting and retaining by an employee of a gift of minimal value, tendered and received as a souvenir or mark of courtesy, and the accepting by an employee of a gift of more than minimal value when such gift is in the nature of an educational scholarship or medical treatment, or when it appears that to refuse the gift would likely cause offense or embarrassment or otherwise adversely affect the foreign relations of the United States, except that a tangible gift of more than minimal value is deemed to have been accepted on behalf of the United States, not you personally, and upon acceptance shall become the property of the United States, and an employee may accept gifts of travel or expenses for travel taking place entirely outside the United States of more than minimal value if the acceptance is appropriate, consistent with the interests of the United States, permitted by the employing agency, et cetera, et cetera. So the big, expensive, fancy dinner is okay. The gold collar, on the other hand, becomes the property of the United States and is not the property of Donald J. Trump. Within 60 days after accepting a tangible gift of more than minimal value, other than a gift described in those paragraphs, an employee shall, A, deposit the gift for disposal with his or her employing agency, or B, subject to the approval of the employing agency, deposit the gift with that agency for official use. So he's got 60 days. It's a question of how long will he do it. Will he stretch it out to the 60 days? Will he sleep in it for 60 days before giving it over? Will he give it over? Will we forget within the 60 days? Will he still be president within the 60 days? All valid questions. And, don't lose any sleep over it, but do keep an eye on it, because I got to tell you, this drove conservatives absolutely crazy during, you'll never believe it, the Barack Obama administration. I found online, over at, I guess, where was it? PolitiFact. They had a piece on this, and they had the example of this meme. You know how they circulate memes like forwarding chain letters on the right. And it's photographs of Barack Obama receiving the very same order. It was, the collar of, the Order of Abdulaziz, the king of Saudi Arabia. I mean, there's a whole protocol describing what it was, but basically it's exactly the same thing, the exact same gold collar that Trump got. But when Obama got it, it was cause for circulating this meme. Those two, the picture of the king putting it over his neck and one of Obama putting it on himself. I'm not exactly sure how that worked out, although maybe he took it off. I don't know. Anyway, but in huge, all caps with 3 exclamation points across the top of our meme here, unconstitutional. Except for them, of course, the major issue was it was accepting an Islamic order and gold medal. It was basically supposedly his acknowledgement that he was a servant of Islam as opposed to simply a visiting dignitary. By the way, George W. Bush did get this same collar too. 3 presidents in a row who have visited Saudi Arabia got the same collar. Crickets for George W. Bush's collar. Crickets for Donald Trump's collar. Unconstitutional Hitler socialism when Obama gets the same thing. But the fun part of it is, why is it unconstitutional? They got the date of the visit wrong here, by the way. The meme says February of 2011, and I believe it was 2009, if I read correctly in the PolitiFact piece. They cite their sources. Unconstitutional. United States Constitution, Article 1, Section 9. You'll never believe what that one says. Remember, these are anti-Obama and almost undoubtedly pro-Trump people now, pointing out for us way back when, no title of nobility shall be granted by the United States. No person holding any office or profit or trust under them shall, without the consent of Congress, except of any president, emolument, office or title of any kind, whatever, from any king, prince, or foreign state. They were furious with Obama's violation of the emoluments clause of the Constitution. And now, crickets, crickets, crickets. Amazing. All it took was for a black guy to get the same thing that 2 white guys had gotten, and boy, oh boy, if the Constitution isn't insulted. Anyway, just thought I would offer you that as a souvenir from those heady days when ultra-conservative wackos remembered that there was an emoluments clause and what it really meant. Of course, this president is violating it 6 ways to Sunday, if Sunday is important to you, and nobody seems to give a damn, and even the GSA is letting him off the hook. It's pretty amazing. All right. Just a few minutes left here, really only 1 or 2 before we turn things over to the guys on the after show. It's been a hell of a day, I must say. Is there anything else at all that we should squeeze in? I don't even know if there's anything else we can fit. I'll hand you all the explainers that I got. One from the Washington Post on the Persian Gulf crisis. One from Middle East Eye, which I don't know for sure is a I don't have anything to say about the source, but they certainly seem to be better informed about the issues swirling in the Gulf there than I am. So, grain of salt, I guess, but you might find it valuable to take a look at that one. And, man, I think that's probably all we'll be able to squeeze in there. There's so much more that we need to speak about. And, oh boy, I should have acknowledged this, but we'll get to this tomorrow or the next day, I'm sure. Jack Goldsmith on a tear on Twitter with a tweet storm, basically backing us up the whole time. You didn't even know it, about the futility of trying to find normalcy in this administration, but really also hinting very strongly at something that has been a continuing theme here for us on this show, that it's bigger than just saying this is not normal. There are legal implications. And you know what? Maybe we can even squeeze this in. It is, after all, just a tweet storm. We'll try our best in this one. Trump's actions since January, and especially in last month, take us so far beyond normal that it's hard to have any faith in the executive branch. In the past month alone, he has told many lies, fired Comey related to Russia probe, dissed longtime allies, re-attacked the courts, this is his second time around, shut out and viciously attacked the press, reacted wholly inappropriately to the London attack, spilled deep secrets to the Russians, called appointment of Mueller and by his own DAG, Rosenstein, a witch hunt, called honorable former officials liars, etc., etc., etc. Given the POTUS's instability, it is not just courts that have to have reason to relax presumption of regularity for this president. That's the key part here, numbers 5 and 6. We all have reason to do so about everything the executive branch does that touches, however lightly, the president. Benjamin Wittes, he notes, took this view back in November. Donald Trump does not enter office with a presumption of regularity in his work. And he continues, I don't know about that date back in November, but this view is certainly warranted now and has been for a while. One thing Donald Trump behavior entails, as predicted on their blog, Lawfare, is many losses in court, not just on the immigration executive orders. Everything else the executive would normally win, reversing clean power plans, terminating treaties, new regulations, etc., will be much, much harder. The impulsive, uncontrolled, ill-informed president infects the legal soundness of everything his administration does. As best as I can tell, no president's action has ever so adversely affected trust in his administration, including Nixon during Watergate. There's more to the rant, but I think that's the real key part here. What it means is that it has been a legal canon in this country since forever, really. The whole concept of deference to the executive branch is now in question. In innumerable areas of law, the executive wins almost always, and you'll see it certainly almost always in the state secrets cases, but in lots of things that don't even involve state secrets, the presumption is almost always that the executive knows what it's doing, and as long as it isn't doing so arbitrarily or capriciously, what it says goes. It's given an extraordinary amount of latitude because it's assumed that the president is a competent person making rational decisions. That having been thrown out the window, you might begin to see rulings of courts that throw decades of precedent out, not because the precedent isn't good, but because this president isn't in compliance with the fact pattern that warrants these precedents. This is an enormous upheaval in the way law would rule us in a land swayed by the rule of law. I can't express it strongly enough. I know I shouldn't have thrown that in at the last minute, but you have to have that in your head. We're going to return to that theme, no doubt, every day from now on. What are they going to be visiting on the after show? Well, we missed all sorts of fun things, and they'll round them all up. I'm going to have to wait until the other side of this announcement to even try and squeeze all of that fun stuff in.
From Daily Kos Radio on netrootsradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
Ready for this? Thousands of New Zealanders brave torrential rains to flip off Secretary of State Rex Everything Tillerson's motorcade through Wellington, New Zealand. India hits back at Trump over his Paris climate deal claims, and Russia intercepts a U.S. B-52 bomber outside Russian airspace and escorts it away during NATO exercises. Wow, stay tuned.